The nation's new drug czar is raising some eyebrows tonight for promising to drop the phrase war on drugs. He says he favors treatment and prevention over locking up drug users. Now, at the same time, a new government report says marijuana that's making the rounds these days packs a huge wallop. Here's Randy Kay.
Looking to get high? Be warned, this is not your mother's marijuana. The drug on the street today, stronger than ever.
We have more people getting in trouble because there's a wolf in sheep's clothing here.
Former U.S. drug czar John Walters worries not only that the marijuana being sold is more potent, but that smokers, especially those who are inexperienced, may not know it. A new study by University of Mississippi scientists in which thousands of samples were tested found the level of THC, the ingredient in marijuana which gets you high, has reached nearly 30% in some samples. Compare that to an average potency of just 4% back in 1983 and about 7% in 2007. By last year, it had jumped to more than 10%. Now, if it keeps getting stronger, as scientists predict, it will likely level off at about 15 or 16% in the next 5 to 10 years. But such high potency doesn't concern Bruce Merkin with the Marijuana Policy Project, who thinks pot should be legal.
They've used these sorts of statistics every year going back 20 or 30 years as an attempt to scare people. Oh my God, it's a whole new marijuana, it's way more potent, be afraid. It's nonsense then and it's nonsense now.
The way Merkin sees it, a more potent marijuana is actually a good thing.
THC is essentially non-toxic, so in some ways higher potency marijuana is actually healthier because the main health risk associated with marijuana is the respiratory harms of smoking, and when it's more potent, people smoke less.
Not true, says our former drug czar.
There is no evidence of that. If anything, the higher potency creates a greater risk of dependency.
This back and forth comes as the country's new drug czar, Gil Kurlikowski, announces he wants to do away with the idea of a war on drugs. He's emphasizing treatment over jail time, part of a different take by the Obama administration on the nation's drug problems. A red flag for his predecessor, John Walters, who says users of such highly concentrated marijuana are already showing up more often at the ER. Walters says users may lose control, have trouble concentrating and sleeping. Teenagers especially may feel suicidal. But proponents of legalizing marijuana are questioning the study's reliability.
The change in potency from one year to the next in these samples may just reflect what the cops happen to see is in any given year.
And so the argument goes, as marijuana smokers continue to light up in search of the next high. Randy Kay, CNN, New York.
Well, 8-time gold medalist Michael Phelps returns to swimming competition. He returns tomorrow for the first time since the Olympics and for the first time since a picture in The Star made him the cover boy for Celebrities Caught Smoking Pot. Today, reporters asked Phelps if he thinks the public has forgiven him. Take a look.
It's a question I should be asking you guys. I don't know. I don't know. It's like I said before, it was a bad judgment and a very stupid mistake that I made, and something I've already learned from, and something I'll continue to learn from, and like I said, before, hopefully I can, help people never make the same mistake.
Well, Phelps says from now on he'll be more careful about who he associates with. In a moment, our Dr. Sanjay Gupta answers questions about the dangers the new super potent marijuana may pose for everyone, especially young people. And later, there's a brand new warning today that marijuana is a lot more potent than a lot of adults ever experienced. Its psychoactive ingredient, which is THC, is more than twice as strong as was the pot in the 1980s, for instance, and it's actually getting stronger. The government says that could especially affect young kids developing brains and bodies. Our chief medical correspondent, Dr. Sanjay Gupta, is here to talk about what modern marijuana does to everyone. So how significant is this report?
Well, it kind of depends who you ask. There's pretty charged people on both sides of this issue, and they look at some of these same numbers, and there are some exact numbers in terms of how potent this is. As you mentioned, Randy mentioned her piece as well. You could measure THC levels back into the 1980s, and 3.5 to 4%, as you mentioned. But you can see sort of that rising scale, 10.1% now. Most recently, when it was measured, they expect it will go to 15 to 16%. And as Randy mentioned, there's some samples that are being checked that are up to 30%. So there could be a wide variation in the amount of this this active ingredient. What was interesting, Anderson, I found when we were interviewing some of these people, is they say more experienced marijuana users, people who smoke it more regularly, might use less because the THC is more potent, and Bruce Merkin in that piece was making the same point.
What impact does it have? I mean, okay, so it's more potent. What does that actually mean? I mean, is it more... I mean, is pot addictive?
Well, some people say it is, and some people say it's addictive to the point where it might be a gateway drug, but that is also a controversial point. What it does in the brain is sort of more well-defined. There are these receptors in the brain called cannabinoid receptors. They do all sorts of things. They're located in specific areas of the brain, responsible for memory, responsible for decision-making, cognition as well. What is interesting is when these receptors are activated, it also releases dopamine, which is the feel-good hormone that we talk a lot about, and that's the thing that gives people that high. What's also interesting, Anderson, is that cannabinoid receptors, when they're flooded, they make you hungry. That's what gives you the munchies. Really? Some diet pills will actually sort of trick the cannabinoid receptors into seeming like they're filled, and that actually makes people decrease their appetite. So it works both ways.
Does more serious or stronger pot cause greater side effects?
Well, it seems to, and specifically with some of these areas of memory, of cognition. The question is, and again, people are very, very vocal on both sides of this issue, do those side effects last? Are they short-term side effects, or are they something that persist? The data that we saw, for the most part, suggests that the short-term side effects are clearly there, and it's associated with that euphoria or that high. But in terms of long-term, how much of an impact does it have? That's much harder to say.
Does stronger pot affect young people differently?
Well, the younger brain is still developing, and so the studies that we've looked at say that it should affect, at least theoretically, younger brains more so, because they're being more affected by this psychoactive substance. So again, memory problems, problems with cognition, decision-making, judgment overall be affected. But again, it is hard to say for sure with any conviction that those side effects last into the future or long-term.
All right, interesting stuff. Sanjay, thanks.
Yeah,
appreciate it.
thank
Dr.
you.
Sanjay Gupta.